We're starting now the first Shi'ur on Hilchos Gitin al Seder on Siman Kuf Chaf. Like I said earlier today, the Shi'urim are Schus Menachem Mendel Ben Adel Miriam. Siman Kuf Chaf is, when they say one of the most, you say the Zikr Siman in Hilchos Gitin, maybe the most, you say the Zikr Siman in Hilchos Gitin. Most of the shilas that come up today in Gitin are based on this siman, which is why we gave a lot of time for learning this with all the Pesach Tshuvos. Also, it starts with the yesodis of what a get is, how a get is to be done, the appointment of the sefer, etc. And that is why a get is written in this. That is why this siman is so basic for the purpose of Gitin. Like we said before, the pasuk, the yesod of Gitin is v'kosav lo sefer kisus v'nasan biyada. Based on the words v'kosav lo, the mechaber starts the first siman, the first din in the mechaber. The get has to be written by the husband, haba'al oy shluchai, the husband or the husband's shliach. The definition of shliach is a halachic definition. Now, if the shliach writes it, the next point that the mechaber writes, it has to be materials that are owned by the paper that is owned by the Baal. And therefore the mechaber writes nohagu. The minhag is that if the husband is matzui, is around, the sefer should give him the paper, the cloth, whichever one he's going to be using, and the ink. And the Ramah adds Yashemim also the quill and all klei ksiva as a matana before he starts writing. So that's the first din written in the mechaber. In the Mittler Rebbe, he brings on this the Rosh and Seder Laget, the Smag and the Sefer HaTruma, that it's not nohagu, rather it has to be given as a matana beforehand. And it's mashma from them that if it was not given a matana beforehand, the get is pasul. Why? Because after v'kosav lo sefer krisus says v'nosan biyada. To be able to do a nesina, to give something, it has to be something that belongs to you. If it doesn't belong to you, then you can't do v'nosan. So therefore, it must be given as a matana before. And that's why the Goyes Maimonios and say that I get of the Mardechai, they both say that the sefer has to give it to the husband before the get is starting to write, because maybe he's going to forget to give it to him afterwards, and the get is going to become pasul. That is the shitta of the Rosh and the Smag and the Sefer HaTruma and the Mardechai and the Goyes Maimonios. But from the other side you have the Rambam, the Ramban, that the husband is anyways kind of the get with the money that he pays the sefer. And even if she pays, we still, Chachamim were makna to him, the schar ha-sefer, and therefore he's kind of also the get. And we're going to get to each one of these nekudas, we're going to get to later what exactly it means. And by this payment, the sefer becomes the schiroi ushluchai of the husband. And therefore, when the husband says kisvu tenu and he's not present al asar, so he's not able to receive the get as a present, the get is kosher even without hakna. And he brings that Rabbeinu Yerucham was machriya that the halacha is like Ramban. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch also. However, nagu olam, that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, it says nagu, it's a minhag that the sefer is makna to the husband everything before he starts writing the get. And if they forgot to do that, no, the get is still kosher. Therefore, the way it's done is that the sefer gives it to the husband as an absolute gift. That's the seder. The husband picks it up back. Then he gives it to the sefer and he appoints him to write the get with his own materials and his own paper and his own pen, because right now it belongs to the husband. It doesn't belong anymore to the sefer. The sefer gives as an absolute gift to the to the husband. Now, if the husband only acquires the get at the end of the writing, before the signing, the Marshal says that if the husband wrote it himself on somebody else's paper, the get is puzzle. But if, and therefore it would seem that maybe the get should be passed in such a scenario, the answer is no. This is explained in Shas Chuvas Imrei Eish and Even Ezer Siman Samach Gimel, that b'di'evad it's kosher, but if it was not given, it's better to write a new get to cover this, that it's being maknet to the husband. Now, if the husband is not there, the way it's done is a sefer is maknet to the husband through a third party. One of the people that are standing over there is zoiche for the paper and for the ink that's going to be used for it on behalf of the husband. Regarding the quill, it's Rabbeinu Yerucham says that it's not me'akev because ein rishumoi nikar, there's nothing visible in it in the final get, only the ink and the paper, and therefore that is what's more important. So you still makna everything, the kleksiv, everything is being, the person is zoiche for it for the husband when he's not there, and that's how the get is written. Now, if a get is not written by mumchim, there is a chashash that maybe there was no proper akna to the husband, and there's other psulim b'chlal in the get that could happen when a person is not mumche. And in Tafshin Aleph there was a polemic dispute among the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael because the get came from Bukhara and it was clear that it was not written by mumchim, and it's given a shaila if the get could be given or not. And there's a book called Aderes Eliyahu, which has in it a kuntris that's called Igeres Shvukin, and if you want to entertain yourself and read the letters back and forth between the Rabbanim, Bechlal, some of the biggest machlekes in between the Rabbanim, the most fiery machlekes in between the Rabbanim throughout the generations, were always related to some get or another, and this is only one that we're mentioning today. There's going to be another one we're going to mention soon. The Mechaber writes that the get has to be written Haba'al oy shluchai, the husband or his shliach. That means, simple translation, that the sefer is the shliach of the husband. Now, we all, as Lubavitchers know, Shluchah Shel Adam Kemoisei, the Sichos of the Rebbe, based on Rabbi Yosef Engel and Lekach Tov, the three levels in Shluchas, what exactly Shluchah Shel Adam Kemoisei, and therefore it would seem that Mitzad the Mechaber, the get has to be written by the Sefer as a shliach of the husband, and in other words, V'kosav law, V'kosav applies to the husband. That's who V'kosav applies on. That the husband has to write. Now, the husband can't write, so he appoints his own person as a shliach. But if there's no appointment of shliach, it could become a problem. The only question is, do we really need full shlichus over here or not? From the Mechaber, it seems like you need to have actual, proper shlichus for ksivas haget. And if you look at the Tur, that same lashon, it says that the husband is mitzaveh the sefer to write the get, but then it says that he's writing it as his shliach. Same thing as there's a Tosfos and Gitin and Tosfos and Yavamas, which also imply the same idea. However, in Tosfos and Gitin is another opinion, and the Rashba and the Ran, from them it's mashma that you do not need a shlichus for get. So therefore, what is there? You don't need a shlichus for get. And the first Beis Shmuel, the second Beis Shmuel on the Siman, right away says, he asks a question, Hayatochen, it's oy shluchai. And he says, why? Because we know that the Cherashet V'Katan is kosher to write the get if it's a Gadol Oimed Al Gabam, and therefore, how could a Cherashet V'Katan the Lav Bnei Shluchus Ninu? How are they able to write? And therefore, it makes more sense to follow the opinion that it's not Medin Shlichus, and therefore he explains that's what's Tosfos is Svared, Tosfos, and I guess the same thing is the Rashba and the Ran, that the Kosav does not apply to the husband. The Kosav is a din in the Sefer. Law is the din of Lishma. The Sefer has to write with a tzivui of the Baal. If there's no tzivui of the Baal, then there's no lah lishma. The chiyuv of the Baal is to make, the get has to be written lishma for her sake. If there's no lishma, if there's a chisaron and lishma, you have a psul in the get. You have a problem in the get. I mean, the get is completely not kosher because it's the deiraisa. Law is a deiraisa. But v'kosav doesn't. There's not a chiyuv on the Baal to write. It's only that the sefer should write b'tzivui haBaal. And you're going to get to later in the Siman all the questions of Imru and the minui shliach, minui sefer if he's not befanav. All these shilas are all based upon this. You say there's a machlekes if you need a shliach, or if the din of a sefer is midin shlichus, or it's only midin of lishma. The Mittler Rebbe seems to be machriya quite clearly that it has nothing to do with shlichus, because if you learn the Mittler Rebbe, he casually left out all the opinions that say that it's midin shlichus. Means the Mittler Rebbe goes through the Rishonim, quotes them on every paragraph. Over here, he only quotes the Ran and the Rosh and Tosfos that it's a din of lishma, and that's v'kosav, and he does not quote v'chlal the opinions of midin shlichus. It happens to be that because the majority are not bekim and what lishma is, so you have to hire a sefer who knows what lishma is, and he has to hear it from the husband. So now we know that according to the people that hold that you need shlichus, v'kosav applies to the husband. According to the people that hold that you don't need shlichus, v'kosav applies to the sefer. So how does it work if v'kosav applies to the sefer? V'kosav is not really applying to anybody. V'kosav is part of law. V'kosav law. It's not two separate things. According to people that hold this shlichus, v'kosav is the din of the husband. Law is lishma. According to the Rosh and the Ran and Tosfos, the Rashba, then it would be that it's not the kosav law is one thing, that the get has to be written lishma. Therefore, the sefer has to write the get, because he's the one who's baki in how to do it properly, and he has to hear from the husband, so it should be lishma. That's what was explained in Imre Moshe on Gitin. There's a sefer called Get Mekusha. There's actually 4 of them. Get Mekusha. One of the 4 was written by the Marit El Ghazi. That's it. So you know when it says Get Mekusha, you'll see it says Get Mekusha dash El Ghazi, Get Mekusha dot Bula, Get Mekusha dash Tzun. So this is from El Ghazi, Siman Hey. He says an interesting nafkamina that comes out between these two shittas. What happens if a get is written by 2 seifrim? One seifer couldn't finish the get, and the second seifer wrote the get. So l'chayr, there's going to be a problem. Why would it be a problem? If you say that the kosav applies, that the whole get has to be written lishma by a sefer, and if the kosav applies to the sefer, then you have a problem because there's no more v'kosav on the sefer. Half a get was written by one v'kosav and half a get by the other v'kosav. But that's only if you hold that v'kosav also applies to the sefer. If you take it in a simpler way, that v'kosav law is just a din in the lishma, completely lishma, then you don't have this problem.
According to the Ram and Yashba, v'kosav needs to go on the sefer. According to the
shlichus, it's not a problem because it could be another shlich. The husband will be another shlich. What's the problem?
Right.
So according to them, it will be a problem. According to the Ran and the Rosh, it will be a problem if there's 2.
The Rosh also?
The Ran and the Rosh also, yeah. The Rashba also, yeah. The other nafkamina, which is going to be discussed later on, is that we say that the sefer has to hear from the husband. What happens if the sefer does not hear directly from the husband? The minui for the get is the get batul midaraisa or pasul midarabanan. We'll be totally also in this nafkamina. That's what the Beis Shmuel writes later on on Sif Dal that you're learning this week. In Sif Katan Zayin, the Beis Shmuel writes that if the husband is appointing the sefer as his Shliach, that means Midiraisa has to be an appointment of Shlichus, and the Sefer wrote it not like that, so therefore the get is batal. And if you're going to follow that it's only a din in Lishma, so it becomes a Shaila in Lishma, so the get is only Pasul Midrabanan. What other nafkaminas come up with it? One of the interesting nafkaminas that come up from it is regarding a get that was written on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. What was the story? There was a guy who gave a get to his wife through a shliach. He appointed a shliach, and it was Baal Korcha. Now we know that you can't be Megarish Isha Baal Korcha. Therefore, the Noida B'Yehuda explained, it was paskined, that it is a ein shliach l'dvar aveda. Therefore, the woman is not megureshes. She was nisgaresh against chen megureshin. It's an aveda, and therefore the woman is not a grusha. And if you look in the Noida B'Yehuda and Even Ezer Kama, Siman starts from like Siman Ayin or something, and it goes. It's in Siman Ayin. It's Siman Ayin. Hey, it starts and it continues until Siman Pei Aleph. Back and forth with his mechutin and other people who got involved in this debate if this get is kosher or not, if the shluchas is kosher or not. And he says that ein shlechet, the pasuk ein shlechet varaveda, and the shluchas is bottle, and she's not megureshes. And now one of his in Siman Ayin Vav, his mechutin writes to him. This is Siman Ayin Hey. Siman Ayin Vav, his mechutin writes to him, hey, that's not a issue. His mechutin was the shal suchuvas mat'amei Yitzchak. And over there, he wrote to him that what it is. That we know that if a sefer writes a get on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim for the husband, the get is kosher. Why is the get kosher? So Noida B'Yehuda, so the Chayil, it's a raya that even that in such a scenario we don't have the issue of shlechet varaveda.
Even if the sefer writes it on.
The sefer wrote it on Shabbos and ain't shlechet varaveda. So the Noida B'Yehuda responds to him in Siman Ayin Zayin quite sharply. I'm not going to quote the Lashonos that he writes on him, and he says that Bichlal, according to Reva Poskim, that hold that you don't need shluchas in v'kosav. It's only a din in lishma. According to them, you would think that the get is kosher, right? And according to the people that hold that's medin shluchas, you would think that the get is pasul. The Noida B'Yehuda says take, if it will be medin shluchas, the get would be pasul because ein shlechet varaveda. So the fact that you're proving to me from there that it's kosher, it's not a raya that there's no shlechet varaveda in the scenario. Rather,
The individual will agree according to them will be kosher by perfect.
No. Why? He says it has nothing to do. He says that there's no ein shlechet varaveda. If you're going to come to it medin shluchas and you're going to think that on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, if a person writes a get on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, it was the sefer is medin shliach, then there would be a svara to say that the get is take apostle because ein shlechet varaveda. Bepoil Shulchan Aruch says that the get is kosher, and the Shulchan Aruch also holds that it's medin shlichas. So the Noida B'Yehuda does not explain it in Siman Ayin Zayin. Rather, the Noida B'Yehuda explains it much later in Madura Tanyana Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, which seems to be connected to this deal, and also because he references it directly. And he says, why would the get be kosher anyways? And he says, because if you hold that it's midin v'kosav, that it goes in a sefer, and it's for sure not a shaila. If you're going to hold that it's midin shlichus, then the husband didn't tell the sefer write it on Shabbos. The husband appointed the sefer to write a get. The shliach chose to write a get on Shabbos. The aveda that he did on Shabbos is not the shluchas that he got. He didn't get a shluchas to do an aveda. He got a shluchas to write a get. So the aveda is not ein aveda zu shayach olam shaleach. is the fact that the shliach was appointed to do something, and he decided to do it in a form which is an aveda, doesn't show on the meshaleach that he appointed him to do the aveda, and therefore there's no shayla of ein shlechet v'aveda over here. So the get would be kosher regardless. But when you send a shliach to deliver a get, then the shliach over there is doing b'shem the husband, and there's no way to do it bal korcha in a way that's not going to be b'dvar aveda. Therefore, this aveda is on the shliach and shlechet dvar aveda, and the shluchis is but we're talking about when the get was written b'shogeg, obviously not b'meiz. B'meiz is under is a whole different shaila. Now let's take it a step further. Now we know that writing a get on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, if it's b'shogeg, regardless it's kosher, even if it's midin shlichus or it is midin the kosav law that the sefer has to do it lishma. I'll give you a different scenario. A person who lives in Chutz La'aretz. This is a shaila which I dealt with in the past, and the Maisa never came to be. There was a person who lived in Chutz La'aretz. He was not interested in giving a get for a while, and they realized that maybe they'll be able, the only time he comes to shul is on Yom Tovim. Now comes the second day, there's a Shavuos. Someone came up with an idea, we'll send a sefer from Eretz Yisrael. He only has to do one day Yom Tov. He'll meet the guy in shul second day Yom Tov, get from him and Minui. Before he could change his mind, he'll write the get on the second day of Yom Tov, and then he'll be able to give the get to the wife. Now over here, the problem is that it's being written on Yom Tov, which for the Meshaleach is Asr. For the Shliach, can sich thinking if it's Asr. It's Lubavitcher, it's anyways Asr, because we're paskin that you have to do 2 days according to the place where you are. Now, if something which is Asr for you and Mutter for somebody else, are you allowed to tell somebody that? That's discussed in Ilchas Shabbos. In Ilchas Shabbos in the Reish Samach Gimel, Sif Chafei, the Alter Rebbe discusses, if somebody davens Ma'ariv early, could he ask somebody somebody wasn't Mekabel Shabbos, do a malacha for him, and the same thing with Tzei Shabbos. Also, if a person didn't do Havdalah yet, it's already after Shabbos, but somebody else already did Havdalah, could he ask him to do a malacha for him? And over there, it's Motir. The Yesod is, the Alter Rebbe writes this, the Yesod of it is, the base of the Alter Rebbe is based on a Rashba in the name of Tosfos, and the Yesod of the Alter Rebbe, Yesod of this halacha is pretty clear. It's basically asking somebody to do something when for him it is being that l'chaverei muter hu, since it's the chaverei it's completely muter, then your amira is not an isur at all. Well, the Alter Rebbe goes into the Kuntasach and Sifkot and Ches. And I'm not going to get into it. Now. It's a very long kontras. Now, but that's just a side discussion. So now, if you have a person who is ben Chutz La'aretz, who's living in Chutz La'aretz, and he tells a sefer who was in Eretz Yisrael Dike, who is in Chutz La'aretz and is planning to go back to Eretz Yisrael, and he follows the paskins that he's not, for him it's not the Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goluyas. So then, if he's going to appoint him on Yom Tov to write the get, but he is not pressured to have the get written right away, so it could be that the sefer could write it the day afterwards. What happens if the sefer actually writes it on that day as the over in it? So the chayla would be totally in the same question. If it's medin shlichus, if he tells him to write it boy by yoy, it will be a shayla. If it's medin shlichus, it's a problem. If it's only medin v'kosav law, then there wouldn't be a problem. And if he doesn't tell him write it for me today, the chayla, it's for sure not a problem, because it will be the same thing as we mentioned in the Yehuda, that he didn't tell him to write it in the day, which is an aveda, even to the people that hold that it is midin shlichus. Now, there is a very interesting shur from the Tzemach Tzedek, which I'm going to get to later, also about this. But for that, I have to first discuss a second the next part of the Sif Aleph, and then we'll go to the Tzemach Tzedek about it. Second one is Takonas Agunis. What's a Takonas Agunis? That the husband really is the one who's supposed to pay for the get, because the get is his. Now, if the husband does not pay for the get, the wife pays for the get, the Shulchan Aruch says, and Takonas Agunis, that the husband is going to try to hold his wife hostage by not paying for the get, the Chacham said let the wife pay for it, and the schar that the sofer receives is being Chachamim hiknu, they gave it as a kinyan to the wife, to the husband. Now, if you look in the Mittel Rebbe points out right away on this. This is based on the Rambam, that the Mechaber writes the pshit is that the wife pays. It says because the wife pays, which is mashma from the Mechaber that there's no more such a thing as husband paying for a get. Takonas Chachamim, from that moment on, the wife pays for it. And the Mittel Rebbe says, "Taka is mashma from the Rambam azoi that the wife is the one who pays for it." Based on this Rambam and this Mechaber becomes a whole discussion. If for the Sfadim there's no Chen Gershom, and they Taka do follow the Mechaber. If a woman receives a get Bal Karcha, which is mutter for them, does she pay for the get or not? There's like a machlokes between the Achronim on that. It's discussed in Get Pashut, on this Sa'if. I think it's Get Pashut. Whether the woman, even in such a case, there's still Takonas Chacham, the woman has to pay for the get that she's not interested in it, or it's only Midin Takonas Agunis, that's if that's only Takonas Agunis is only when she wants to get. If she doesn't want to get, there's no Takonas Agunis anymore. So therefore, the husband is the one who has to pay for the get. Anyways, the Mittel Rebbe says that this is according to the Rambam. However, according to the Rosh and the Smag, they still say that even after Takonas Chachamim, still the husband l'chatchila is the one who has to pay for the sofer. And only if he's not paying for it, then kicks in Takonas Agunis, that the wife is the one who pays for it, and the Chachamim are makne the schar sofer to the husband. What's the lashon? Aknu rabbanon lebal schar zeh. The Chachamim were makne to the husband the schar shehifkiru mamon isha. They were mafkir the money of the wife, and the Mittel Rebbe brings it. That's what the Kesef Mishnah. That's Gos Mamonia Sefer Atruma Smagan Abin Yerucham. Now, the Mittel Rebbe here points two things in this little sentence. Aknu rabbanon lebal schar. First of all, the Chachamim were makne to the husband the schar. Second of all, sheifkiru mamon isha. They were mafkir the money of the woman. If you look in the Beis Yosef on the tour, which mentions it, the Beis Yosef only mentions it's medin hefker bezdin hefker, but doesn't say the Chachamim were makne the schar to the husband. The Chalkas Mechaik of Yosef Katan Gimel just says Hiknu Chacham Schar Sefer Labal. Doesn't say that there was hefker bezdin hefker. So, how exactly is this transfer effectuated from one to another? Say hefker bezdin hefker, and Chachamim were makna to it. And here we're going into we have to go a little bit deeper into understanding what is exactly hefker bezdin hefker, how is exactly it works. Now, clear from the Mittel Rebbe that both of these things happen. Sai, the Chachamim were mafkir the moment of the woman that she gave for the sefer, and Sai, the Chachamim were makne that moment that they were mafkir to the husband. And so how does it work? First, even though the Mittel Rebbe writes Aknu Rabban Schar Zeh Shehifkiru, that they already were mafkir. So first the bezin is mafkir the schar of the woman, then the husband is koinet also mitzad takonas chachamim. Right? And therefore, according to this, it makes sense why the Chalkas Mechaikik writes over there in the same Sifkat and Gimel that if the woman gives her own cloth, that she's her own paper, but she doesn't pay the sofer, so in such a scenario, she has to be makne the paper to the husband befeirush. Why is that? Because Takonas Chachamim, they were mafkir the moment, they were not mafkir cloth. Takonas Chachamim that's the logic to it. Now, if we don't have both, Sai the Hefker and Sai the Akna, you have a Shaila, how does this thing come to be? That means, because if we only say Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker without Hakna's Bezdin, Hakna, then once the Chacham were Mafker, Maman or Isha, the husband has to be koined somehow to be able to give it to the Sefer. But the woman doesn't give it to the husband. The woman gives it directly to the Sefer. So what exactly is this? How exactly does this work? So now let's start with the Tzemach Tzedek, and I will tell you. You should give you a minute's break and go get your white books if you don't have them by you, or get a white book from downstairs, and I'll wait. I don't know if you need everybody to go, but a few people go and bring a pile up. Okay, the Tzemach Tzedek in Siman Kuf Nun, Tshuva Siman Kuf Nun, Even Ezer Siman Kuf Nun, which is page 148 in the white book. This page number is in the bottom, page 148 in the white book, brings from the Sefer Teiras Gitin. Teiras Gitin is the same person that wrote Nesivos HaMishpat, the same person who wrote Meker Chaim and Hilchas Pesach, and the same person who wrote Chavas Das. Just historical fact. So if you find, you don't have to if you want to quote something, you just have to know the history, so you know who's who. It just happens to be the same person. Anyway, so the Teiras Gitin, Sifkat and Vav on the Teiras Gitin you also have downstairs, on this Siman, says that if the father of the husband, or the father of the wife, are the ones that give the schar to the Sefer, she's not Megurish. That asks the Tzemach Tzedek a question. Being that we have the minhag that the Sefer is makne, the paper and the ink, to the husband, why should we care who pays the Sefer? The Sefer belongs to the husband. And even if you're going to say that Chachamim were only makne to the husband, the Schar Sefer, if the woman is the one that gave it, and that is Takanas Chachamim, and not when somebody else gives it, still, in all the mashmos of the Ramban is that regardless of who pays for it, if the ink and the paper were given to the husband, the Sefer gave it to the husband, then you bechlal don't have to think about this concept of you bechlal don't need a takanas chachamim of hiknu schar sefer labal. And you still have a kosav, and you still have a nosan. Why do you have a kosav? Because it was written either b'shlichus abal or it was written b'tzivui abal, and you still have a nosan. Why? Because it was written on paper and with ink that belongs to the husband because the Sefer gave it to him, and therefore he's able to do v'nosan. He's able to give it, and that is even if the Sefer is expecting to receive schar from the woman, in the end he gets it from somebody else, and therefore it makes no difference. First thing, it makes no difference who would give the money afterwards. No nafkamina who pays the Sefer, because there's already a kinyan of the paper and the ink. So therefore, that's the first question Tzemach Tzedek has. Haytachen, you have bechlal a chashash if the father of the husband or the father of the wife are the ones that pay. Why do you bechlal have to worry about the hiknu chachamim, whether it's kinyan chachamim or not? And Tzemach Tzedek continues, even though from the lashon of the Rosh it's mashma that the husband is the one who's supposed to give the schar get, and if the husband doesn't give it, chachamim were makne whatever the wife whatever the wife paid, and based on the order of the way the Rosh writes it, yeah, because the Rosh mentions the din of aknas adyoy, and then afterwards he says the husband should pay, and if the husband doesn't pay, we have to takans chachamim. So the fact that the Rosh had to write both of them one after another, it's mashma that even though the sefer was makna the paper and the ink to the husband, and afterwards the husband refuses to pay, then you still need takans chachamim. So therefore, it would seem that this issue of aknas adyoy and the paper to the husband doesn't help you if the husband is not the one who pays for if the wife is not the one who pays for the get. That's the Machzedek says, nah, that's not the issue over here. We're talking about that the sefer is being maknet. Why is the sefer being maknet, the diyoi and the niyar, the paper and the ink? Because he's expecting to get paid. That's why he's maknet. So the Rosh comes and tells you afterwards, the sefer gave it to you because he's expecting to get paid. If he's not going to get paid from one, he's going to get paid from somebody else. If he's going to get paid from somebody else, it's going to become a shaila who it belongs to, because at the end of the get, he's maknet because he's going to get paid, whatever the price of the get is. At the end of the get, he's expecting to get paid, and suddenly he gets paid from the wife. We say, hey, maybe it belongs to the wife, because she's the one who's paying him. And it's going to be a problem of enosin at that moment, because that's what it shows that akana from originally was a problem. So therefore, we have to do this takana, that even though the wife is the one who gave the money, it's still the money still belongs to it still becomes the husband. And the Tzemach Tzedek says, and this will only be an issue if you hold it, the shluchas, that v'kosav is midin shluchas, not midin lishma. Because then you're going to say the sefer wrote it and expecting to get paid. And the person who pays him is Galia Milsa, that he's the one who's really his Meshaleach. Therefore we have a problem. But it's not exactly the Rosh himself doesn't hold that it's Midin Shluchas. The Rosh holds that it's Midin the Sefer. So it's on the Sefer. And therefore comes the Kasha. Anyways, there was Lishma over here, La Lishma, which is Lishma. Because the Sefer is the one who wrote it with the intention based on the Minui of the Baal. And therefore, when the husband acquires the paper and the ink, l'chayra, it's already his. So why comes back the question on the Rosh, that why does the Rosh say after the kinyan of the husband, of the ink and the paper, that you still have takanas chachamim, that the kinyan of the mammon, of the money that the sefer got paid from the wife, is a takana that you have to do with the husband. L'chayra, the kosav is there, the paper is his, the kosav is there because the sefer wrote it. Law is there because the husband has told him to write it. V'nasan is also there because the husband was kind of the paper. So Tzemach Tzedek comes and flips the whole thing around and says this takana is only by a woman, not by anybody else. Why? If a woman writes her own get, she has to clearly means the husband tells her, write a get, because I can't write it on my behalf. The get is kosher, but she has to be makna the get to the husband after she's done writing to give it. And therefore, also, when she pays, the Chachamim had to make a takana that there has to be a hefker bezdin with a kinyan and everything else. But if somebody else pays for it, what does it make a difference? The husband could appoint a shver to write the get. The husband could appoint his father to write the get. Doesn't make the get doesn't make a problem in the get. Only when the wife writes it, we have a shaila on it. So therefore, when a shver or his father or a shver are the ones that pay for the get, or some other organization wants to save the people who pays for the get, then there's no shaila. You don't even have to come to that knas that the chachamim were makne the moment of the sefer that the wife gave to the husband. The only shaila is when the woman is the one who pays for it, because then we're going to say it probably maybe it's like the wife writing it herself, which is then you need actual hakna. But otherwise, you don't need the whole din of hefker bezdin hefker. So the Rosh that he holds that it's v'kosav is on the sefer and has to be l'shma. The reason why he writes that at the end that if the husband doesn't pay, the wife pays, and if the wife pays, you need to do the haknas, we need the taknas chachamim that were makna the moment to the husband is only by a woman, not by anybody else. Anybody else, you don't need this takana, and therefore, Mimanav Shach is this din of the Teras Gitin has no yisoid. Unless you're going to say that the kosav applies on the husband. And then you're going to say, he's the sofer, even though that the sofer, the one who he gets paid from, is the one that he has in mind, is his meshaleach. So therefore, even if somebody else writes the get, even if somebody else pays for it, it's still not the husband. You don't have the v'kosav that the husband is writing the get. So therefore, maybe it is a problem. And over here, the Chachamim came and made a special takana for the woman, but the Chachamim didn't make a special takana for anybody else. So they have a problem with the din of the Teres Gitin. So Tzemach Tzedek says maybe Taka we should be machmir like the Teres Gitin in such a scenario. Tzemach Tzedek says no, you're not going to be machmir according to the Teres Gitin for a very simple thing. The Chachamim were makne, before we already explained according to the Rosh, the Chachamim were only makne by Isha, because only by Isha it's a shaila, if we don't hold of din shluchas. But if you hold of din shluchas, that's what I explained, according to those people, what's the din of the hakna over here? The Chachamim were makne schara sofer. They were not makne that the money that the woman gives is specifically defined to the woman. That's the first thing that Tzemach Tzedek points out over here. Second thing, the sofer is not writing and giving the paper and everything else as a shliach of the husband for the purchasing. He's giving it the husband is appointing him as a shliach to write the get, and the reason he's agreeing to do it is based on the fact that he's going to get paid down the line. But the shluchas is still intact. He's masking to the shluchas because he's going to get paid. And it doesn't make a difference who pays him. So therefore, even if we say it's medin shluchas, still the shluchas is intact because the husband appointed him. And the only thing is, the Chachamim were makne, the schar, the whatever schar the sofer gets, regardless from who it is, becomes the sofer's. And now the schar that's being given to the sofer becomes the baal. The schar that's being given to the sofer, the father of the girl or the father of the boy who's paying the sofer is not giving it because he needs the get. Either he's happily married or happily divorced, but he's not the one who needs the get right now. He's doing it because there's a woman here who needs to have her get. So the person is already being, in his mind, is already being makne the schar to the woman. It's a teva, so it's for her benefit. And even if you want to say it's only mitzad the isha, when the chanas chachamim is only mitzad the woman, like we said before, it's still going to be, it was given on her behalf, so it became her money, and then kicks in the hefker bezdin hefker and hiknu chachamim schara sefer labal. And what's the proof to this? He says from the Ramban, that the Ramban says, back to the Ramban, that if the klaf, the paper and the ink belong to the husband, at such a point you don't need bechlal the hakna schara sefer, the din schara sefer, as opposed to it goes back to the Ramban from before. According to the Ramban, if the husband gives his actual paper and actual ink to the sefer, without that the sefer gives it to him as a present and he picks it up and he appoints him, he actually brings paper and ink, well, he's a sefer, so he has everything. He brings it to the sefer and he gives it to the sefer, tells the sefer, I'm also a sefer, you're also a sefer, here is a paper, please write a get for me. And then the Ramban says you don't even need the whole, we don't go to the whole din of hiknu chachamim, the schara sefer to the isha. That being, because he wrote betzivuy abal and shluchas abal, so, and the sefer knows that he's going to get paid from the woman, still it's not paying him at all in the shluchas. Because v'kosav happened with the paper and the ink of the Baal. And that's if you say it's Medin Shluchas. And for sure, if it's not Medin Shluchas, then you have to worry about it. And even more so, you want to still go back, as the Tzedek says, you want to still go back and get stuck on the idea that when a sofer gets paid from somebody, he might have in mind that he's doing it on behalf of the other person, and therefore the Chachamim had to come and say that hiknu schar sofer, and it also only applies to a woman. He says, by a woman, when a woman writes with Tzivuya Baal, the get is kosher. And we don't say that the shluchus is batal, even though he appointed her as the one to write the get. And we don't say that she's writing it al das atzma, and she has a valid reason to write it al das atzma because she actually wants the get. We don't say that. We say that the get is kosher, as long as she gives it afterwards to him. Yeah, she's maknet to him. So how could you say it? Mamoina is chamur megufa. When she writes it herself, it's kosher. And when she pays for it, it becomes a shayla if it's kosher or not. So therefore, he says that's why since we say mamoina can't be worse than gufa, therefore when the get is written by somebody else, by a woman, and even by somebody else, b'chlal. So it comes out from the Tzemach Tzedek that according to the Rosh, the way the Tzemach Tzedek understands the Rosh, happens to be that if the father or an external person pays for it, it's even better, because if it is b'chlal, you don't need Taknas Chachamim. Taknas Chachamim is only when the woman gives it, because then we have a chashash maybe on her behalf, but if it's somebody else is kosher to write a get. And being makne the paper and the ink is more powerful than being makne the schar of the sefer. So comes out from here, we have, according to the way the Tzemach Tzedek takes it over here, and we're soon going to see another tshuva from the Tzemach Tzedek in a minute, that there is hefker bezdin hefker for the money, and there's also haknas bezdin, that the bezdin is makna the schar to the sefer, according to one of the explanations of the Tzemach Tzedek, that chachamim makna the schar to the sefer also applies to saya hefker bezdin hefker and saya kinyan bezdin kinyan. And according to the Teres Gitin, no. According to the Teres Gitin, hefker bezdin is hefker, and so we're going to see what he holds exactly about the kinyan. According to Teres Gitin, you have to have only where Takanas Chachamim was. That's the only place where it kicks in. But any place there's no Takanas Chachamim, there's no haknas Chachamim of the momoin to the sefer. There's another tshuva from the Tzemach Tzedek, where he takes this whole bezdin maknet to a whole new level, and that is. No, it's page 371 in your white book. It's in the section of Safek Lemi, Siman Yudalad. That means it's Safek if it's the Tzemach Tzedek's or not, or it's still printed in the Tzemach Tzedek. Siman Yudalad. Over there is that the brother of the wife was the one who acquired the paper, and he was not makna to the husband. He forgot. He gave it to the sefer, gave it as a present to the sefer. And after the writing of the get, that's when the sefer remembered, and he tells the brother, hey, you gave it to me, you didn't give it to the brother of the wife. He says, you didn't give it to your brother-in-law as a present. Be makna to him right now. The shaila is if it works or not. And the Tzemach Tzedek gives a few little paragraphs one after another. Each one is another inyan. I'm going to go through some of them, not all of them. The first point that the Tzemach Tzedek says is, Take and Beis Shmuel Sifkat and Beis, on the Siman, it says that haknoah of the paper works after writing a get. But it's mashma from the Beis Shmuel that it only works if the sefer is the one who owned the paper, not if it's somebody else. But he says, let's put that aside. Even if you say that the paper was not acquired by the sefer, and therefore the sefer was not able to be makneh to the husband afterwards. Yeah, because when the sefer was makneh to the husband, he was makneh something which Lavdafka is his. because it had to go from the hakna had to come from the brother. So he says at least you know for sure that the diyoi, the ink, was given by the sefer, and that for sure was being nikna to the husband. So maybe also could be that the paper also was being nikna to the husband. Why? Because the brother knew what the sefer is doing, knew that the sefer is going and writing a get, and the get is being written for his sister. Therefore, he was being maknet to the sefer for the sake of his sister. And it goes to discussion if it could be kind of something. I'm skipping those two paragraphs. It would be kind of something if the das of the isha to be kind or not. And in the end, he said as follows: that be'etzem, that happens to be that even the last paragraph of the tshuva, even the ink itself is also being the fact that the sefer's ink was being used for this, and the sefer maybe forgot to say it or whatever it is. The takonas chachamim mitzat takonas agunes is also the haknas hadiyoi also happens mitam bezdin. The bezdin not only maknas chala sefer like we saw before, but even the ink is also being nikna, bezdin's makna the ink to the husband. So therefore, the ink was being nikna to the husband, makna to the husband. That's the Tzemach Tzedek puts it into the Takan Chachamim. Therefore, also the paper was being makna to the husband within Takan Chachamim. Well, Tzemach Tzedek goes, maybe the paper and the ink are two separate things, but whatever. That's the thing. So here we have another element to it. Let's go back to the Schar HaSefer that we said. It seems pretty clear from the Tzemach Tzedek that the husband is, that the wife is, the Chachamim were mafkir, the person who gave the payment to the Sefer, and were makne to the husband regardless of who it is. And the Teres Gitin, no, the Teres Gitin doesn't seem to say that. Now, Teres Gitin over here doesn't discuss it. Like I told you, Teres Gitin has other Sfarim. One of his Sfarim that he has is Mekar Chaim Anuchas Pesach. Mekar Chaim Anuchas Pesach is about 25 pages that he writes. It's a Siman Taf Mem Ches, Sa'if Katan Tes in Biurim. And over there, it's 22 pages in the Mekar Chaim. And he goes discuss the whole inyan of Hefker. And Bein Hadvarim, he discusses Hefker, the din of Hefker, Bezdin Hefker, as it relates to a get. And he explains over there that only Hefker Bezdin, there's only Hefker Bezdin Hefker, but there's no Kinyan Bezdin Kinyan. And he proves it from the get Pashat over there. Well, that's how he understands it. He explains that there's Hefker Bezdin Hefker is one thing, and Kinyan Bezdin Kinyan is not like that. But he doesn't go into so much detail there regarding a get. Where does he go into this detail regarding a get a little bit more? In his book Nesivis, in Siman Reish Lamed Hey, in Choshen Mishpat, on Sa'if Hey, there's a machlekes on Sa'if, Sa'if Zayin, sorry. Reish Lamed Hey, Sa'if Zayin. You have over there, it's dinim of a cotton. When could he sell metalton? It says the cotton that bought karka, and he paid for it, and he was a machzik, he gets it. Why? Because zachin la'adam shlei b'fanav. And there's a whole discussion between the machlekes ktsas and the sivis. How does this exactly work? How could a cotton be kaina? First of all, get rid of his money, pay for something, purchase something with it. So the Ktsas says, Chachamim were mafkir the moment of the cotton, and therefore, midiraisa, hefker bezdin hefker, and therefore, they also made a kinyan that money went and purchased something else. Then the Sivis disagrees with it and says, I already explained in Mekar Chaim, and in the book Kehilas Yaakov and Even HaEzer Siman Chav Ches If Yud Gimel, another sefer of his, that Hefker Bezdin is only Hefker Midiraisa. Hefker Bezdin only removes the ownership of somebody from something. It doesn't, Midiraisa, Bezdin doesn't have the koyach to create the transfer ownership. Bezdin has a koyach to cancel ownership. So hefker, bezdin, hefker. But the kinyan that happens afterwards is only a kinyan midarabanan from Takanas Chachamim. That's how he explains it over here in the Nesivos. And the same logic he explains in Mekar Chaim. Similar, but not exactly the same words. And he proves over here also from Get Pashut, he says that that's what it is. And therefore, in certain scenarios, when you need also a kinyan midaraisa, will be a problem. If you only need a kinyan midarabanan, and Chachamim were masakin the kinyan, then it works. So, to wrap it all back to here, over here, the Teiras Gitin, which we said is the same person, he paskins that it doesn't work, because he goes in his opinion. Hefker, bezdin, hefker, that's true. Kinyan, bezdin, kinyan is not mamash azay. Chachamim, in specific scenarios, Chachamim were masakin. So they were masakin that it belongs to the husband, but only in a specific scenario. And any other scenario, it doesn't work. Over here, so therefore, unless you have the specific Takanas Chachamim to make a kinyan, there's no automatic that hefker, bezdin, hefker automatically also, you could also have a kinyan, bezdin, kinyan midaraisa. Kinyan, bezdin, kinyan can only work midrabanan according to the Nesivos / Mekar Chaim / Teiras Gitin / Kehilas Yaakov. And therefore, that's the reason why over here you have this problem that if the husband didn't give it and the wife didn't pay the schar sofer, somebody else kicks in and pays for it, that you don't have a Takanas Chachamim to create the kinyan midin Chachamim, because only what they were masakin for a kinyan, that's the only thing you can be masakin, therefore it doesn't work. But according to the Mittler Rebbe, who says it combines everything together and says, the lashon of the Mittler Rebbe, like I said before, is Aknu Rabbanan Schar Zeh Shefkiru Mamin Ha'isha. The Chachamim did the whole package deal. The Chachamim were makna what they were already mafkir. Yeah, so therefore over here, and according to the way that Tzemach Tzedek explains, that not only is the haknas schara sofer from whoever it comes, also the haknas adyoy and the niyar and everything else also becomes nikna. So according to him, there's actually a proper hakna. Now, based on this issue, whether it's midin kinyan, whether there is an actual kinyan or not, and whether Chachamim were makne, who's schara or makne, you look in the Pischei Tshuva Sifkoten Daled, brings from Yeshuas Yaakov Sifkoten Daled, that if the woman agreed to pay for the get, and then the woman changed her mind after the get, and she doesn't want to pay the sofer, then the sofer could say, well, I was not maknet al das that you're not going to pay me. I was maknet only on das that you're going to pay me. It's one of the points that comes out from this. So the Chachamim were makne schara sofer, but if there's no schara sofer, then the sofer who was makne the paper says the whole kinyan was based on nothing. However, if you look at it as a machzedek, it seems that once the sofer is makne the niyar and the dyoy, he's relying on schar. You could say one of either way, based on which paragraph it's a machzedek you're going to take. Either it does work, because the kinyan works regardless, or it doesn't work because the sofer was maknet al das that at some point down the line is going to get paid from somebody, and over here he's not getting paid from it. Now, there's another thing. What happens if the woman when the woman paid the sofer, she had in mind that it's only because she's going to go afterwards, drag him to Bezdin and be teveh from him the moment. She was never really intended to pay the money herself. So Shas HaTshuva Sefer Yeshua Siman Tzadik Hey says we don't say Hefker Bezdin and such a thing. Hefker Bezdin is when the wife gives her own money. Because then it's not that she's planning on it's not that she's lending money to her husband. She's planning on paying for the get. So therefore, when she's planning on paying for the get, so we say Hefker Bezdin Hefker. But if you don't have it, then it's not. However, I would like just to conclude with this. According to the Pri Chadash, which I mentioned to you, I said according to Pri Chadash and Sifkoten Hey, he's the one who says that even by Megar Shebal Korcha, you still have Takanas Chachamim that she pays, and Hefker Bezdin, Hefker on such a scenario, and Kinyan Bezdin, Kinyan. Seems from the from the Pri Chadash that Hefker Bezdin Hefker is a global thing for any pay, similar to what the Tzemach Tzedek says, that the Chachamim were Mesakin Hefker Bezdin Hefker for the payment that comes. The wife had in mind this, the wife had in mind that, the wife this, that makes no difference. The wife didn't want to get, the wife did want to get, the wife wanted to get paid from the husband, it makes no difference. Hefker Bezdin Hefker applies, and therefore the Cha'ira, it would work, according to the Pri Chadash, it would work even if she demands to get the money back. And if you look in Shalos Tshuvos Amudei Eish Siman Chaf, it's quite clear that also this concept also applies, is also mentioned over there, that even if she has in mind to take the money back from her husband, it's still not an issue regarding the kashus of the get. Now, so with that, we pretty much finished the first Sa'if of Siman Kuf Chaf, and with that I'm going to conclude the shiur for today. And I only mentioned certain nekudas from Siman Kuf Chaf. The reason why I wanted you to learn Pischei Teshuvos is because, again, all the Yesodis that you're learning in the first Sa'ifim are going to keep you for a lot of other Yesodis Yikashailas in Hilchos Gitin, that without knowing these Yesodis, without understanding whether there is Hefker Bezdin, there's no Hefker Bezdin, whether it's a Shliach or whether it's a Tzivui, or what the Geder of the Shema is, all the Shailas are not going to be able to know where it starts from and how appointment, what exactly the Tzivui means, etc., how does the Tzivui exactly work, etc.